My name is Amelia. I'm 36 years old and work as a curator at a private gallery specializing in contemporary art in Seattle. I'm not someone who cares too much about appearances, but my job requires me to always look polished, neutral midi dresses, neatly tied up hair and thin eyeliner. People say my eyes are easy to trust, but lately, I don't even trust myself. I live with my husband, Daniel, a real estate businessman, and our 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Our house is located in the northern part of the city on the edge of a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by pine trees and a lake that reflects the evening sky like a mirror. It's a 2-story house with a sloped European-style roof, rebuilt from an old structure nearly 80 years ago. When we first moved in, Daniel joked, "If there are ghosts, I'll make friends with them." But lately I'm the one who feels like I'm living with something invisible and not at all friendly. My mother passed away 3 months ago, suddenly while on vacation in Arizona. A heart attack, unexpected, with no warning, leaving behind only a will that had already been sent to the family lawyer. She left me nearly $2.5 million, mostly from stocks and real estate. I haven't touched a cent. Not because I don't need it, but because something doesn't feel right. Since the funeral, Daniel has been acting differently. Not exactly distant, but constantly busy. Sudden meetings, phone calls past midnight, and hushed conversations I overhear when passing by his study. Every time I ask, he laughs it off. "You're overthinking, I'm just trying to secure our future." I want to believe him, but deep down something chills me to the bone. Lily, my little girl with soft curls and amber eyes, has always lived in her own imaginative world. She could turn a crack in the floor into a treasure map or call drifting clouds sleepy lions. But lately she's been quieter. She often sits by the living room window, staring into the yard with an unreadable expression. "What are you looking at, Lily?" I asked one morning while pouring orange juice. She didn't turn around. "Don't you see? The shadows moving between the trees, they're whispering to each other." I gripped the glass tightly. "You're imagining things again." Lily turned to me, her gaze slow and serious, enough to give me chills. "It's not imagination, they're talking about you." I was about to ask more when Daniel came downstairs, adjusting his suit sleeve and smiling. "I have to leave early today. There's a meeting with Japanese investors. If it goes well, we'll have an amazing vacation. Lily, what do you want Daddy to bring you from Tokyo?" She stayed silent. I forced a smile, but my heart was still racing from what she'd just said. I walked Daniel to the door and watched his Range Rover roll down the gravel road. A cold gust of wind made me pull my coat tighter. Though the sun was up, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. Not from afar, but close. Maybe inside this very house. Everything started with my mother's death. And I'm scared the next one will be me. 3 days after Daniel left for Tokyo, Lily barely moved from the living room window. She drew more, but not flowers or castles like she used to. Every drawing was of a house surrounded by swirling black lines, with faceless figures standing behind the windows. I asked her what she was drawing and she simply said, "The ones who are waiting." "Waiting for who?" "Waiting for you to wake up." I was used to Lily's vivid imagination, but the way she spoke, slowly, clearly, without blinking, sent a chill down my spine. That night, I checked her sketchbook. One page had been torn out. The next showed our house, covered in red splotches with a long-hailed woman at the center, either sleeping or lying still. I tried to brush off my thoughts. Maybe I was just overreacting, still grieving. But things got stranger that Wednesday afternoon, when I was organizing the storage room and found an old leather notebook hidden behind a loose floorboard. The notebook had no name on the cover. Inside were rough technical sketches of the house, or rather the original structure. It showed an underground passage, a narrow tunnel leading from behind the kitchen to a room beneath the ground, completely separate from the main foundation. It hadn't been mentioned in last year's property inspection. When I brought the notebook to the living room, Lily looked up from her comic book and casually said, "I've seen that." I froze. "Seen what?" "That tunnel. In my dreams. A voice told me to show you the way." I swallowed hard. "What voice?" "Grandma's." I almost dropped the notebook. That evening while I was clearing the table, Lily dragged a chair over and whispered, "You shouldn't be home alone after dark. They don't like you being here." "Lily, don't say things like that. I heard Daddy talking to someone. He said if you disappeared everything would be easier." I stared at her. "Where did you hear that?" "His office. I was sitting by the door. He didn't know." I tried to stay calm, but my stomach was in knots. That night I snuck into Daniel's office. The computer was logged out, the drawers locked, but in the trash I found a crumpled stack of printed documents, a diagram of our home security system labeled full lockdown mode, and a blueprint of the house. One note was underlined in pencil: "Ensure there are no uncontrolled exit points." I collapsed onto the floor, my head spinning. What is happening? A text alert came through. It was Daniel. "I need to stay a few more days. Big deal. Don't call." Then a phone call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. "Ms. Amelia, this is Marcia Bennett, loan officer at First Haven Bank. I'm calling to confirm a request to close the savings account under your mother's name, Annette Wells." "Close the account?" I gripped the phone. "I never requested that." "Oh," the woman hesitated. "The signature on file is yours, but I'm sorry, I can't share more without legal authorization." I hung up, my hands shaking. "Daniel, he's trying to take my mother's assets?" When I entered the bedroom, Lily was sitting on the bed hugging her stuffed bunny, eyes fixed on the window. "Mom," she whispered. "It's starting." "What is?" "The shadows in the garden. I see them and they're coming closer." I rushed to the window. A black SUV was parked not far from the house, headlights just turned off, no one stepped out. But I could feel it. Someone watching us through the glass. I held Lily's hand tight. For the first time in my life, I was too scared to even breathe. Something had shattered inside me. Trust, safety, the feeling that this house was once a sanctuary. Now it was just a box, a trap. And someone, or several someones, was waiting for me to fall right into it. I couldn't sleep the entire night. Even after locking all the windows, pulling the curtains shut, and holding Lily tightly in my arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us from outside. Or worse, from inside the house. Early the next morning, while Lily was still asleep, I stepped into Daniel's office. This time, I wasn't just looking around. I searched with intention. I pulled out drawers, checked behind bookshelves, even removed the back of a framed picture on the wall. Finally, at the bottom of an old beige file box, I found a thick envelope sealed with red string. The label read, "Metropolitan Life, Life Insurance, Amelia H. Jameson." My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a life insurance policy worth $2 million. The beneficiary? Daniel J. Jameson. The signing date? 1 week after my mother's funeral. It felt like a punch to the chest. I had never agreed to sign any recent insurance documents. The signature looked like mine, but the strokes were stiff and distorted, not how I've ever signed my name. Beneath it was a handwritten note, unsigned. "Complete all paperwork before the 30th. Make sure nothing is traceable, especially by her." I quickly closed the file as I heard a sound in the hallway, but it was just Lily. She walked in, holding her stuffed bunny, eyes still heavy with sleep. "I dreamed about Grandma," Lily whispered. "She said don't trust Daddy." I knelt down and took her hand. "Lily, if anything ever makes you feel scared, please tell me, okay?" She nodded but said nothing more. Her eyes, once again, tightened something deep in my chest. I brought Lily over to our neighbor Susan's house, the one who used to teach her art. "She has a mild fever," I lied. "I need to take care of some urgent paperwork. Can you watch her for a few hours?" Back home, I called the insurance company, pretending to be Daniel, asking about the policy I'd just found. After a few basic verification steps, worryingly just his birth date and the last digits of his social security, the employee confirmed. "Yes, the policy has been activated. All benefits are now under verification status, in the event of disappearance or unexplained death." I hung up, my face drained of color. Daniel had made a plan. While gathering all the documents, my phone rang. Caller ID, Charlotte. Daniel's mother. Reluctantly I answered. "Hello, Charlotte." "Amelia." Her voice was always soft but chilling. "Daniel called me this morning. He said you've been a little tense lately. Is everything all right?" I stayed composed. I'm just sorting through some paperwork related to my mother's estate. A short pause. Then Charlotte's tone shifted, sharp and deliberate. He's been under a lot of pressure, Amelia, you know that. You shouldn't make Daniel feel distrusted, especially right now. You wouldn't want Lily to grow up without a father, would you? I clenched the phone. Are you threatening me? Oh no, just reminding you there are things you don't know, and sometimes knowing too much isn't good. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. I was trembling. There was no more doubt. They were setting a trap. That afternoon I found another copy of the house's blueprint, aged, marked in red ink, hidden behind the bookshelf. On it was a note. P4. My strange label under the basement. An area I thought was just a storage room. I decided to check it out. The old basement door creaked. My flashlight flickered across moldy walls. I followed the blueprint, counted my steps, until I reached a section of brick wall that looked different. The mortar was relatively fresh, as if recently patched. I knocked. It sounded hollow. Something was behind that wall. A room or a passage. Before I could do anything else, I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps echoed upstairs. Daniel was home. I switched off the flashlight and backed away, staying completely silent. His voice floated down, calm and eerily steady. Amelia, where are you? I brought something for Lily, and there's something important we need to talk about. I pressed into the shadows, my heart pounding like a war drum. I had to choose. Keep pretending or face the truth. But I knew this much: if I stayed in this house tonight, I might not get another chance. I stood frozen in the basement, heart racing in my chest, threatening to shatter the silence around me. Daniel's footsteps creaked above, slow, deliberate, like he was drawing out the moment. I backed into the corner, pressing my body against the cold wall. My phone buzzed once. Susan's text. Amelia, Lily wants to come home. Are you okay? Is something wrong? I typed quickly. Don't let her come back. Please keep Lily safe. Lock the doors. Something is happening. Right then, the downstairs light switched on. Daniel's shadow stretched long down the narrow stairs. Amelia, his voice called, soft like honey. I know you're here. We need to talk. About your mom. About everything you've misunderstood. I held my breath. My hand tightened around the flashlight like it was my only weapon. A short, sharp beep. Then click. The basement light went out. I instantly flicked on my flashlight, its beam jittering across the brick. Then I heard it. The mechanical sound. Not from the stairs, but from the windows. I bolted upstairs, but the basement door slammed shut and locked from the outside. I twisted the knob. It wouldn't budge. I ran to the kitchen door. Also locked. All the windows, all the exits. Metal bars slid into place from the frames, just like the security diagram I'd seen in Daniel's printed files. No alarm, no warning, just silence, the faint smell of melting plastic and a light trace of gasoline in the air. I was in full panic. I tore through drawers, searched for the landline, disconnected. I ran to the front door. Of course it wouldn't open. I rushed to the living room, pulled out the house plan I had hidden. The underground path marked P4. It was the only way out. I sprinted to the kitchen, yanked open the pantry, ran my fingers along the paneling until I found a narrow seam, pressed, click, click. A section of the wall slid aside, revealing a dusty, low wooden door. I opened it. Inside was a tight tunnel, just enough for one person to crawl through. My heart was pounding wildly, but I had no choice. I grabbed the flashlight and crawled in. The air was thick, musty, with the smell of rotting wood. I moved slowly, guided by the dim light. Every sound behind me sent chills down my spine. I didn't know if Daniel had noticed I was gone, but I knew. The house wouldn't be safe much longer. After what felt like forever, I saw a faint light ahead. I pushed through the rotted wooden door. It opened with a loud crack. I was behind the garage, next to a stone wall covered in ivy. An open space, no cameras, no barriers. I didn't hesitate. I ran like mad down the narrow back path toward Susan's house. Pounded on the door, desperate. She opened it, her face pale when she saw me. Covered in dirt, face ghost white. Oh my God, what? No questions, call the police, right now. Lily ran out and hugged me tight. Mom! I held her close, trembling, and whispered into her ear, "We're never going back there, do you understand? Never." Susan called the police. I handed them everything: insurance evidence, security system prints, Daniel's files, the audio recording I captured days earlier. Meanwhile, from Susan's window, I watched my house catch fire. Flames roared from the basement, then spread across the ground floor. The smell of burning plastic reached even her living room. Lily buried her face in my shoulder, whispering, "I saw it in my dream, Mom, but this time, we got away." I couldn't look away from the blaze consuming every memory. For the first time in months, I felt alive. But I also realized my so-called husband was willing to do whatever it took to make me disappear into the ashes. I sat on Susan's couch, wrapped in a blanket, arms still around Lily. My mind was a storm of shock, rage, and disbelief. The flames outside still reflected through the window. Fire had swallowed everything. Our home, our memories, and the lies that had lasted too long. The police arrived just minutes after Susan called. A female officer named Harper entered, professional but not cold. "Miss Amelia Jameson?" "Yes. We received calls from neighbors and the fire department. Your house is gone. But there's evidence this wasn't an accident. Can you start from the beginning?" I gave them everything I had: the fake life insurance policy, photos of the altered security system, copies of the notes I found in Daniel's office, and the recording on my phone, Daniel's voice telling someone to make sure nothing is traceable. The officer flipped through each document, her expression shifting from doubt to growing alarm. "You said you were locked inside. Who has access to the security system?" "Daniel Jameson, my husband. He said he was on a business trip to Tokyo, but I'm sure that was just a cover." Harper nodded. "We'll review all financial transactions, traffic cams, and check for any exit records, but to be thorough, I'll need to talk to Lily. Do you consent?" I looked at my daughter. Lily sat quietly beside me, not crying, not afraid. Her gaze stopped me cold. "You ready, sweetheart?" She nodded softly, then walked over to the small table to sit across from Officer Harper. "Lily," Harper asked gently, "did you hear anything strange from your father? Or notice anything unusual around the house?" "Daddy was on the phone," Lily whispered. "I was eavesdropping behind the door. He said, if Mommy disappeared, everything would be his. Then he said, just make it look like an accident." Harper stopped writing and looked up at me. "She's very clear. Was anyone else involved?" Lily nodded. "Grandma Charlotte? She called Daddy too. I saw him smiling when he talked to her." Harper let out a breath. "We'll issue a summons for her investigation." That afternoon, police executed a search warrant at my mother-in-law's house, Charlotte Jameson's, located just over 15 minutes from mine. There they found a file of investment plans under my name, forged power of attorney documents, and over $80,000 in cash hidden inside a safe. At the same time, Daniel was located at a gas station near the Oregon border, driving a silver SUV. Not a company vehicle, but a rental car with fake registration. In the trunk were stacks of crisp cash, a fake passport under the name Andrew Simmons, and a printed route plan to Canada. When arrested, he said only one thing: I was forced, this was all my mother's idea. Charlotte was arrested that same night. She refused to answer questions and only repeated coldly, "I did everything for Daniel, he's the one who was misled." I wasn't surprised. Daniel had always done whatever his mother told him, but he wasn't innocent. Together they had built an elaborate plan to make me the next unfortunate accident, all to get their hands on my mother's inheritance and start a new life, without me. What chilled me the most was how prepared they had been. House blueprints, the insurance policy, the altered security system, the destruction of evidence, every step had been calculated. If it hadn't been for Lily, I might have been nothing more than a name on the morning news. After signing off on the case files, Lily and I were taken to a safe witness hotel, a small room with a window overlooking a quiet lake. For the first time in weeks, I didn't hear metal doors locking or quiet footsteps behind me. Lily lay beside me, still clutching her stuffed bunny. "Mommy," she whispered, "do you think they'll come back?" I kissed her forehead. "No, they can't hurt us anymore. The police are here. Everything will come to light." Outside the window, the sun was setting, but inside me another kind of sun had just risen, one of hope, of justice, and of a new beginning. I was no longer a woman who trusted blindly. I was a mother who had learned to fight, for truth and for her daughter. The trial of Daniel Jameson and Charlotte Jameson began Monday morning in the largest courtroom of King County Courthouse, Washington State. The gallery was packed with reporters, curious residents, and former colleagues of Daniel's from the real estate industry. But no one stood up to defend him. His reputation, the perfect husband, a refined businessman, crumbled during the very first hearing. I sat in the witness box gripping my mother's old bracelet, heart heavy. Lily sat beside me, her hair neatly braided, her expression as serious as an adult's. She wasn't scared, just silently waiting for the truth to be told. The prosecutor began with evidence that was clear and indisputable: the life insurance policy under my name, signed just after my mother's passing. The tampered security system that locked all exits from the outside. Photos of Daniel withdrawing cash and renting a car with fake documents under the name Andrew Simmons. Testimonies from me, Susan, the neighbor, and especially Lily. When Lily took the stand, the entire courtroom fell into a chilling silence. "Do you remember what your dad said?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes," Lily answered firmly. "I heard Daddy say, as long as it looks like an accident, no one will suspect anything. Then everything will be mine." "Are you sure?" Lily nodded. "I was standing right behind the door. He didn't know I was there." Across the room, Daniel lowered his head, unable to look at his daughter. The defense tried to spin a different story: that Daniel was financially overwhelmed, that Charlotte coerced him into the plan, that he had suffered emotionally after his mother-in-law's death. But they had nothing to counter my mother's journal, found after the fire, hidden in an old drawer in her storage shed. In one entry she had written, "Daniel keeps urging me to invest in his business, but when I ask for financial statements he dodges. I suspect something's wrong. I'm worried about Amelia, he's too confident." That journal entry was the final blow. The prosecutor closed with a powerful statement to the jury. Daniel Jameson didn't just attempt to end his wife's life. He was prepared to turn his 6-year-old daughter into an unknowing witness. This plan was supported by his own mother, Charlotte Jameson, who was willing to sacrifice anyone to give her son a fresh start built on another family's fortune. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict. Daniel Jameson, 15 years in prison for attempted arson, conspiracy to harm a family member, and use of forged documents. Charlotte Jameson, 8 years in prison for conspiracy and falsifying financial records. When the sentence was read, Daniel said nothing. He only lowered his head. But for the first time during the entire trial, Charlotte screamed, "This is all your fault. If you'd done it right, I wouldn't be sitting here." Daniel turned to her, his voice ice cold. "You didn't force me to sign the policy. You didn't lock the doors. That was my hand." The man who once held my daughter so gently now sat slumped in a gray prison jumpsuit, eyes empty. The toxic bond between mother and son, twisted by control and delusion, finally broke on the very stage they had created together. As we stepped out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed with cameras. One asked me, "Amelia, how does it feel to see justice served?" I squeezed Lily's hand and answered slowly, "Justice doesn't erase the wounds, but it stops them from spreading. I know that starting today, my daughter can finally sleep in peace." Lily looked up at me and whispered softly, "Mom, I dreamed about Grandma." She was smiling. She said, "Good job, Lily." I bent down and hugged her tightly. Even though I lost everything, my home, my trust, and the people I once called family, I held on to the one thing that mattered most: the bond between a mother and daughter, and survival not just in body, but in spirit. And that to me was the greatest victory of all. 3 months after the trial, Lily and I moved into a small house in Edgewater, a quiet lakeside town south of Seattle. No more automatic gates, no complex security systems, no towering walls, just a simple white fence, a front yard full of lavender, and a wooden balcony overlooking the clear blue water. We didn't need much, just the feeling of being safe and a place to breathe without looking over our shoulders. Lily quickly fell in love with her new school. She made friends with a small group of kids who also loved to draw and grew especially close to her art teacher, Miss Diana. Every evening, Lily brought home a new drawing, sometimes a wooden bridge over the lake, other times a portrait of me reading beneath a maple tree. She has a truly special inner world, Ms. Diana said during our first parent-teacher conference, and a rare gift for visual expression at this age. I nodded, not surprised. Lily had seen and survived things no child ever should. Art had become her own language, the way she healed wounds too deep for words. As for me, I returned to work at Gallimore Gallery, the place where I had been a curator before stepping away to care for my mother. At first, I worried I wouldn't be able to focus. But instead, every time I stood before a piece of art, I felt calmer, more grounded in myself. Outside work hours, I began planning a long-dreamed project, a foundation to support young female artists, funded in part by the inheritance my mother left me. I called it the Reverie Foundation, based on the idea of a Reverie dream, a voice for those who had once been silent, overlooked, or broken. We would host exhibitions, workshops, and provide scholarships for female art students, especially those who had experienced trauma, loss, or abuse. I wanted to create a space where women weren't just seen, but truly heard. At our first planning meeting for the launch exhibit, I ran into Ethan Torres again, an architect I had worked with the previous year on the restoration of a historic gallery. He was quiet, had a deep sense of aesthetics, and a rare ability to truly listen. "Melia," Ethan smiled gently when he saw me fumbling with a stack of layouts. "If you're trying to rebuild faith in the world, don't start by trying to raise every beam on your own." I laughed for the first time in days. Maybe he didn't know his words had touched something soft inside me, a place long shattered but still unwilling to give up hope. That evening, while Lily was drawing on the living room floor, I sat beside her, flipping through the Reverie Foundation materials. "What are you drawing?" I asked. "You, me, and Grandma," Lily answered, eyes still on the page. "We're standing in a museum full of paintings. I'm the one who drew them, you're the one who hung them, and Grandma, she's the one shining the light." My throat tightened. She had no idea what those words meant. Or maybe she did, more than I ever realized. A cool breeze drifted in from the open window, carrying the scent of lavender from the garden. I looked at Lily, then up at the creamy white ceiling of our new home. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the night. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I knew one thing. From now on, I would write this life myself. No more secrets, no more control, and no one else deciding my worth. I am Amelia Jameson. And I survived. Not to hide, but to rise. On Christmas afternoon, snow began to fall softly outside the window. Flakes landed gently on the wooden roof, dusting the balcony in a thin white layer. In the small kitchen of our lakeside home, the scent of cinnamon and melting butter from a freshly baked apple pie filled the air, blending with the soft jazz playing from the corner speaker. I was setting the table when Lily ran in from the living room, holding a small gift box wrapped in handmade green paper. "Mom, I made this for you." I sat down, took the box from her little hands, and gently untied the ribbon. Inside was a small wooden frame, holding a drawing Lily had made. 3 people sitting by a fireplace. Me, Lily, and a tall man with soft, curly, dark hair. I recognized Ethan immediately. "What were you thinking about when you drew this?" I asked, meeting her serious gaze. "I was thinking, this is family," Lily said slowly. "I know it's just us, but when Mr. Ethan's here, it doesn't feel empty. It feels warm." I stayed quiet. Outside, the wind brushed snowflakes against the glass. Lily's words echoed inside me like an answer to a question I'd never spoken aloud. "What is family, Mom?" she asked again, her voice softer. "Dad used to say it's about blood, but I don't think that's right." I lowered my eyes and placed the frame on the table. "Family," I began, "is where there's care, protection, and unconditional love. Not everyone with the same blood deserves that role. Family is the person who makes you feel safe, lets you be yourself, and never makes you afraid to ask for a hug." Lily nodded and smiled. "Then, we already have a complete family." I raised an eyebrow, teasing, "What do you mean?" "I think, if it's okay with you, Mr. Ethan could be part of our family. I'm not saying you have to marry him or anything, but if he were here every night, I'd be really happy." I laughed. "Whoa, what if I told you I've been thinking the same thing?" Her eyes widened. "Really?" "Really?" Just then, there was a knock at the door. Ethan stood outside holding a bouquet of white roses and a large paper bag. He wore a thick wool coat, a gray scarf wrapped around his neck, and his eyes lit up when he saw me. "You didn't forget about tonight, did you?" he asked. "I brought chocolate cake from your favorite place." I let him in. Lily ran over and hugged Ethan, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The room seemed to glow brighter, effortlessly. We had dinner by candlelight beside a small tree that Lily had decorated with paper ornaments she made herself. Afterward, Ethan told a story about being forced to sing in a reindeer costume as a kid at a Christmas pageant. Lily laughed so hard she nearly fell off her chair, and I cried from pure joy. When the clock struck 9, I tucked Lily into bed. Before falling asleep, she turned to me and asked, "Mom, will we still be here next year? We won't have to move again, right?" I stroked her hair and whispered, "No, this is our home, Lily, our real home. And no one can make us leave?" I squeezed her hand. "No one can take this place away from us anymore." Lily closed her eyes, a peaceful smile spreading across her face. I turned off the light and quietly stepped out of the room. Downstairs, I found Ethan by the fireplace holding a mug of hot cocoa. He turned and looked at me, his eyes softer than any words. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," he whispered. "But maybe family isn't something you're born into. Maybe it's something you choose." I nodded, and hold on to. I walked over and leaned into him. The firelight flickered against the wall like a heartbeat. Snow continued to fall outside, but inside that little house there was warmth, peace, and a quiet promise. We had survived the darkest days to find each other right as the light returned. A new beginning, not perfect but truly ours. Amelia's story isn't just about escaping a dark plot. It's a powerful reminder that family isn't always safe unless there's love and respect. Her clarity, courage, and devotion as a mother carried her through the shadows to rebuild her life. In a world full of uncertainty, what matters isn't where you came from, but where you choose to belong. A place with real love, understanding, and unconditional grace. What do you think about Amelia's journey and the choice she made in the end? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family, truth, and the courage to begin again.